Welcome to the Blockbusters and Birdwalks podcast. I am the curator, Garrett Chaffin-Quiray. Today we have a conversation with a friend, Ed Rosa.
That's me. Hi. My filmmaking partner and I have a YouTube channel, Toothless Richard Productions, where you can see a number of our short films. A blockbuster is a film that makes disgusting amounts of money. They tend to be movies that sort of invade the popular consciousness in a way that's difficult to avoid.
I tell people that a blockbuster is a $100 million gross in a single territory. Airport is a completely mediocre, absolutely silly, perfectly dumb movie that is also a wonderful portrait of life in the late 1960s in the United States. But to suggest this is something people ought to go see is missing a wider point, and that is Airplane is the better movie. When you see Airport and its ilk defining then the sort of disaster movie complex of the 1970s, it makes and deepens the regard that I now have for Airplane in retrospect.
I know 0 Hour with Dana Andrews is the original template for Airplane, or at least what got them interested. What if I think they said to themselves, what if 0 Hour but funny? I can see them watching this and being like, well, we can do better.
Yeah.
Which is a testament to how well done it is. And I think it's also funny that we're talking about Airplane when we're supposed to be talking about Airport.
There are several things that I want to make sure that we do touch on in our conversation about Airport. And one is its historicity. Everybody's smoking everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Its experimental format. All of the transitions that involve fades and wipes and dissolves, multiple images on screen at the same time to give you parallel action is kind of terrific.
Yeah.
And totally unexpected.
Well, and that was sort of a thing that happened a bunch in I think the late 60s and the 70s that sort of has fallen out of favor now. But when I did my senior thesis film, is it Fulci? There's a movie called One on Top of the Other that uses that same kind of editorial flair.
Right.
And I've always loved it, so we tried to replicate it in my film. Whereas something like that technique is used in say Stunt Rock,
the ultimate rush.
Not as creatively as it is here in Airport. In Airport, it was crazy. You're getting the picture splitting into 5,
right?
And then when you're in the cockpit with Dean Martin and the guy from Twilight Zone, and then and you see the little the oval portrait of the air traffic controller appear between them. I'm this is because I don't need a bunch of cutting back and forth.
That's right.
But I do need both sides of this conversation. So that's just a brilliant way to do it, and it looks great, and it's super stylish.
And that was completely unexpected because it is an experimentation in form. It definitely draws your attention to temporal design and the choices for how to dice the image, which does remove me from any sense of emotional attachment of being invested inside the story, as if it were possible from more than 50 years removed from something that's as slim as this is. But still, that's kind of rad. And another thing that is, of course, important to me, the first plane flight I remember being on was in the early 1980s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
And I think that was after the jet revolution. The planes that we're talking about in this, I think 707s, which hold 80 or 90 people. The first one I think I went on held 200 or more.
Yeah, I think I was on a 747.
Right. And so there's this key change that unless you're of a certain age, you cannot remember from lived experience, because the world shifted when the planes got more powerful, larger payloads, including people and things. Mm-hmm. And so it's rather sweet that they're so concerned about this little itty-bitty plane with this little itty-bitty problem. And so it throws into relief some of the secondary scenes in the movie about airport design, about urban traffic, about the flow of highways, about how to move people around, and the expense of air travel. This is before Reagan broke the union, the flight control union, and it's before the democratization of plane flights with competition with various carriers. There's a secondary character who shouts in the middle of the thing. I spent $500 on my ticket, and this is 50 years ago, which
Right.
would be something like a couple grand
Yeah.
just to go to Rome from Chicago, which I'm sure you and I could budget shop right now and find something for well under $1,000. So these little notes, historicity,
Yeah.
And-
this is when planes used to have, like, lounges.
yeah, and like
They
there's
don't
this
have that
rad
anymore.
scene when the stewardess is going down the aisle. It's a huge wide aisle. And she's giving a shrimp cocktail to
Right.
first class with individual glass containers. It's just, these things are not possible in a
Yeah.
post 9/11 world, the one that we actually live in now. And of course, that wasn't anticipatable. Except this is about terrorism, so
Yeah.
all this stuff kind of bubbles up. All right, so this is not a good movie, but I think we have something to talk about, and I think we enjoyed the experience of watching it. Is that right?
It's fun. It's a little long, but I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it the whole time and, was invested.
Okay. I was kind of amazed, given the lineup of other movies of 1970 in which this movie finds its debut, that this was considered one of the best of the year. It was nominated for Best Picture against, some important stuff.
Yeah, I was looking at the Oscar, the nominations, the ones it was nominated for, and that it won, and I was kind of stunned.
On the other hand, it does represent a political pressure inside of the Hollywood industry to reward a certain kind of old-fashioned entertainment. What I mean to emphasize is we're watching this movie because it was and is a blockbuster. In unadjusted gross receipts, it was right around the $100 million mark then.
Wow.
And through whatever re-releases it may have had, I'm not sure if it did. Internationally, it was not nearly as successful, but you pile it all together and then you put it in today's money, the movie earns something on the order of $750 million.
Wow.
It's a stellar achievement for
Yeah.
something that is sort of weirdly tame and kind of restrictive and then weirdly conservative with some of its social positions. More on that later. It was not hugely expensive, but the money that they rolled into this thing was pretty thoughtfully spent on the salaries of these dozens of performers. Most anybody in 1970 would have recognized a lot of the main
Oh, yeah.
cast members. And there's some nice, tricky stuff about making the interior of a warehouse space look like an actual moving jet. There are some neat miniatures to see it, flying above the clouds. There are really rich moments to consider the technology of air traffic control and of then wireless communication. We're sitting here with phones in our pockets, and we've had them for years. In this movie, they have phones in cars.
Yeah.
And they can take mobile calls, and they have pagers. Things that I distantly remember from parts of my childhood, mostly attached to the medical profession. This whole movie could be short-circuited with one iPhone connection on the Verizon backbone.
Right, yeah.
But because that doesn't exist, it can't happen. And so, again, we're in this historical moment when this movie's plot, its story, its setting is even possible.
Pagers, for me, was involved in the drug trafficking profession.
Right.
That's been my experience with them. I need weed. My phone number, 911.
Need weed bad.
Yeah.
Bad need weed. Good. Well, okay, so let's back up. What is this movie about?
Ultimately, it's about a plane that needs to make an emergency landing.
That's right. That's all that it is.
Yeah.
And you pile into that like a list of really big-time movie stars, headlined by the likes of Burt Lancaster
Yes.
and Dean Martin, who are brothers-in-law who hate each other. And then I want to emphasize this strongly. Both men are in their deep 50s when they take this role.
Mm-hmm.
Burt Lancaster is showing his age. He's stooping a bit. He looks like he's in his late 50s.
Yeah, his hair's a little messed up.
Right.
He looks a little haggard. But I suppose that...
It fits the role.
Right.
And Dean Martin doesn't look like that. That dude's got swerve. He's got game, and man, he's a player.
That guy, I read a book on the Rat Pack, and in real life, Frank Sinatra was actually totally, envious of Dean Martin. Because Dean Martin, the way he could sing effortlessly and could just charm the pants off of anybody,
Right.
was something that... Because I guess Frank Sinatra actually had a lot of, self-confidence issues. You wouldn't know it looking, watching him. And it's funny because just watching, they're like, oh, there's a bomb on the plane. And Dean Martin's like, well, I better go back and check it out. He's just, he's cool as a cucumber.
That's right. I'll just take care of this.
Because
Yeah.
he knows most likely he can charm the pants off the guy with the bomb.
And he nearly does, except for the fool who's like, $500 ticket!
Yeah.
I don't have a lengthy attachment to either Burt Lancaster or Dean Martin. I do know Dean Martin's long musical career. And that voice is syrup, man. It's
Yeah.
easy to listen to him recite really compulsory expository dialogue.
Yeah.
But he can sort of get away with it. And he looks so bronzed and so healthy and vital. And then I looked up his age and went, my God, the guy is he's not ancient, but he's firmly, deeply in his middle age, and he still looks like he's capable. And of course, he's got a girlfriend on the side. Not only is he married to Burt Lancaster's character, Mel's sister, he's running around with Jacqueline Bisset, who is Gwen, one of the stewardesses. Not only that, he's knocked her up.
Yep.
So I wasn't prepared for that secondary story, which puts real pressure on then the abortion rights kind of issue, or the right to life issue, depending on your side of that divide. And they're overtly talking about, well, I'll be glad to pay for your abortion.
Right.
And then she's like, well, but I think it'd be cool to have a baby, and I won't, trouble you for it, but, this might be my chance. I'm getting old. I must be 25, or whatever Jacqueline Bisset is saying, and implicitly defining her womanhood that way. So issues do bubble up into this thing quite unexpectedly, which must have been very titillating to audiences of the time, including some sensuality. Jacqueline Bisset is putting her clothes on when we first see her, and we see her from the side in the nude, not quite full exposure, but we get a little glimmer.
Yeah, and this is rated G. Because only in 2024 and in the internet age is the human body considered pornographic in its purest form.
Right, without being exploited. Although this movie is trying to exploit it. Let's be serious. It's taking this beautiful English woman and making her the side piece of one of the two leads, and they sort of almost get away with it because of their interpersonal charm. Although there's a very devastating moment towards the end of the movie when Dean Martin's character, Vernon, he's the pilot of this doomed plane because of terrorist activity. He has
Wait, isn't he technically not the actual... He is a pilot, but he's there because he's having to evaluate the Twilight Zone guy.
Oh, you're right.
Pilot,
That's
and
right.
they had done that for each other.
That's right.
So they're both actual
it's
pilots.
It's compliance.
But, yeah.
Two pilots in the cockpit with an experienced navigator or something like this. Yeah, so that's right. It's arbitrary to put all these people and stuff them into the same metal tube. As a parenthetical, because we recently spoke about Officer and a Gentleman, and the whole scope of that movie, which was made about 11 or 12 years after this one, was go be a military aviator and then become a commercial aviator and bank money and have a great career. We are seeing the earlier generations result of that, because these men seem to have been military-trained aviators, probably in World War II and or Korea. Nonetheless, we're seeing the fruits of that experience, which we've already sampled with An Officer and a Gentleman. And there's this hint that virtually all of the men we meet in this have a heritage and experience of military service, including our bad guy, Van Heflin, who plays Dio Guerrero, a CB engineer or something like this. And he can't find meaningful civilian work and concocts this plot to murder himself with airline insurance to pay off his wife and make sure her life is okay. In exchange, he'll kill 80 people.
Right, yeah.
Great guy, Great guy.
Lorraine Stapleton must be a hell of a wife.
That's right, and she sort of gets away with her part at being the long-suffering wife, Inez, who mostly is there just to cry and be upset when she realizes what's happening.
Yeah.
So I guess the point of raising that issue is I was touched by the number of different women who play important roles in this.
Yeah.
The roles are adding up to how do we bring this plane down safely, how do we investigate what's really happening, how do we determine the results. And again, this is before the internet and all of the related communications that we presently live with were possible, so a lot of it really is by putting together odd clues. There's a detective quality to this movie. Each of the characters know one thing, and the dramatic irony of the whole movie, which one of the points of its tension, is we, the audience, we know a lot more.
Yeah.
And can't you put it together faster? And of course you can. It depends on driving through blizzard conditions to deliver the kernel of wisdom that you've got to somebody with the phone who calls somebody who doesn't know anything. And we're privy to the fact that a ne'er-do-well has a bomb. It's a workplace narrative. That's the hook. Mm-hmm. That lands on me. And for some reason, while I was watching that and thinking, do I have the volume up? Do I have a bad copy? What's going on here? No, I don't. I just have to relax, chill, just take a break, Garrett, just watch what's here. I connected with All the President's Men and how a lot of that movie is the procedural quality of daily work in an environment most of us know very little about.
Yeah.
Many of us have been on airplanes, but I don't really know what an airport looks like, aside from the places where I go buy a coffee and wait. And when there are various emergencies, even the practice steps, long before the actual problem of this story rolls up, we see the differentiated equipment that helps service airplanes that are on the tarmac. All of the different trucks that come out to do this or that. And while some of them have changed shape in our time that you can now see when you go to the airport, their essential quality of distinction is all built for service. One truck that has a stairway attached to it for getting people out of the plane. One that has a chute for dropping luggage. Ones that carries luggage. All of these things, which I'm imagining for a lot of folks in 1970 watching this movie would have been a revelation. George Kennedy blows into this thing.
Oh, yeah.
As this terrific George Kennedy teddy bear.
Yeah, about as macho as you can be.
Right. You
Just
got a plane stuck in the snow? I'm going to get it out of the snow so we can get something out of the sky.
He is masculinity incarnate.
He's got 5 babies and a horny wife, and they got a date night that he's got to interrupt to come save the airport. Why? Because he's a union rep and can get all the other boys like him from all of the competing airlines to agree, you got to fix the airport. So something about that just lands, like blue-collar, good American stuff. And there's George Kennedy leading the way. Give me a shovel!
It's always interesting to me when I see men who are not exactly the most attractive by today's standards exist in these macho, romantic kind of parts. Did women actually be like, dude, that George Kennedy?
He's the stuff.
He's hot. Like,
well, you think about it, he was in HUD, right? Isn't that what he got his... No, Cool Hand Luke.
Yeah.
Cool Hand Luke is where he got his Academy Award. And I saw that movie, unexpected. I think I had a hangover, and I watched it on a Sunday afternoon just to sort of wait for my head to feel better.
Right.
It was one of those days.
Yeah.
I'm like, George Kennedy's taking his shirt off. Look at that big dude. He looks great.
Yeah, when the barrel chest, which doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But, dudes used to have that.
It's a different kind of a build, and our aesthetics have changed. But I take from George Kennedy's career and his role here the valorization of a man who uses his body and the charisma that stems from that, which bonds other men and some women who are attracted to that to one another. Because they understand using these bodies in a group task can lead to something great. Admittedly, his task is just getting an airplane out of a snowdrift. It's small stakes until the fact that there's an airplane caught on the tarmac that's in a snowdrift is critical to getting the wounded plane out of the sky. So it adds up. And of course, that's probably directly related to the forms of manhood that people were very aware of in 1970. Fellows who'd gone off to World War II, who were now pillars of the community, who by then were in their 40s and 50s, who were the local leaders, who had established themselves in the trade unions, who'd become the leaders of all different forms of business and industry, know how to work together. It was formative. And that was an expectation. But you got to get the right guy to do it. And it can't be somebody who's a bit of a bean counter.
Yeah.
It's got to be a strapping dude. So it's perfect casting that way. Other things that sort of crop up that pleased me in the first part of the movie, and this is an obscure Garrett reference. Growing up, I knew all 4 of my grandparents and would spend time with them. My maternal grandparents lived in a section of Long Beach, not far from an airport, and they were always frustrated by being in the flyover zone.
Was it John Wayne?
I forget.
Okay.
Now. I was a little young to identify which airport that it was. It might even have been LAX in the way that certain things, from just the way that it came in from the ocean. Nonetheless, there's a sensitive background component to Burt Lancaster's problem in this moment. He's the manager of the airport, Mel Bakersfeld, and he's trying to both control the airplanes coming in and airplanes leaving, dealing with a weather disaster in midwinter, dealing with a crumbled marriage. He later learns that his wife is running around on him and wants to walk away from him, which leaves him blessedly open to enjoying Gene Seberg, his assistant.
Right, his concubine.
Right, who he has been chased towards, but wishes very much to enjoy. He's also dealing with the fact that the board he serves as the manager of the airport want him to make things run more smoothly and less expensively, and to not get complaints from the neighbors who are angry at the flyover zone. So there's this tremendous pressure about, if we fly over this one neighborhood and cause them to do a class action lawsuit, you, Mel, are going to lose your job. Our plans for expansion aren't going to happen. We can't bring in these new jets Boeing has just made, and so on and so on. And I remember my grandparents very intensely complaining about that on weekend visits when the house would rattle a bit with some of the low-flying jets. And you'd be like, "Ooh, this is kind of a hoot. Grandma's house is kind of crazy."
Yeah.
And then the jet age happens, and then there's going to be this massive upgrade in the upcoming decade for super jetliners that can not only go a distance, but one hell of a distance, carrying lots and lots of people. There's a lecture that Mel delivers to the chairman of the board on this very subject, where you're looking at a map of the existing airport and a mock-up of what he wants to...
Yeah, that little model of the new one.
And that starts to resemble the sort of spoke and hub wheelhouse that we see in places like the Denver airport, which I've been through a number of times. The historicity cuts in another way, too. People are using payphones. The point there is, we watch private citizens, like Inez Guerrero, who realizes her husband's a terrorist, it seems, call on the phone to a bank of customer service
a call center,
and somebody picks up immediately and answers her questions.
And they're domestic. And they didn't outsource it to another country.
And they're completely polite. It's all a bank of women, so I mean, it's very sexed work, which strikes me as correct for the time. But that happens instantly. There aren't any phone trees. There's no automation. It's just you make a phone call and somebody picks up the phone. This is an expectation. Wherever phones ring, somebody picks them up. Mm-hmm. Winningly, Mel in his office has, I think, 3 phones. So in there coded, there's the red phone, emergency. So when that happens, he has to put, hold on a second, and puts the receiver on his shoulder heel while he takes the other phone line. So it's kind of rad to remember that, in fact, we used to live this way.
Yeah.
So much of the movie is just built around these characters fumbling with the strange reality of being high-end technicians in a technological age before modern technology, computers, really took things over and changed everything.
Yeah.
And it's given a loving treatment. And again, I cannot imagine that most viewers in 1970 had ever seen anything like this.
It was a time when, like I said, planes would have a lounge. You didn't just fly necessarily because you had to go somewhere. It was like, no, that's part of the trip.
Yeah, people are dressed up to travel. Mm-hmm. The fellows are often wearing blazers and ties, not just because they're professionals, but they're on an overnight flight to Rome.
Yeah.
And, we're going to be treated to something really nice. And they're
we're
treated
get
that
shrimp
way.
Cocktail and brandy. And
right. And we're using proper utensils that are going to be washed, and we even see kind of some of that stuff happening. And another small detail, because, of course, we do live in the post-9/11 world, that these planes and the embarkation points are completely unsecured. The pilots come in and out of the cockpit at will. People sometimes come up out at will. Nothing locks.
I have to believe that, like, anybody born after 9/11 that has flown and that would watch this might find the Ada Quonset storyline to be a little dubious if they couldn't believe that, no, there was a time when you could basically just, like, walk onto a plane. This movie's a bit like a cinematic platypus. There are some moments that are super lighthearted, and then conversely, you have a man blow himself up in the bathroom, which is, pretty serious.
Right.
So the more we talk about it, I did really enjoy it.
Just speaking to the moment in which it is released, March 5th, 1970. And in that season, MASH was already in theaters, Patton was already in theaters, and Zabriskie Point was already in theaters. At the same time that this movie comes out in March, you could go down the street and see The Boys in the Band, which is just acid right in your face. Mm-hmm. The Battle of Cable Hogue, The Liberation of L.B. Jones, Woodstock was released as a lengthy, I think a 4-hour documentary.
Yeah.
And Waterloo, your boy, Sergei Bondarchuk.
Yeah, yeah.
In April, we get Hi Mom, De Palma, and that's a sequel to Greetings. Mm-hmm. And then you get A Man Called Horse, which is one of those videotape covers that I was always tempted by at Blockbuster. The years I worked there and the years that I would go down the aisle and pick things I wanted to go see. In May, you get Let It Be and Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Was Let It Be, was it actually released?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Cotton Comes to Harlem, The Out-of-Towners, Watermelon Man. And that's our guy, Melvin Van Peebles, which I know each of us have a soft spot for. You get Two Mules for Sister Sarah, and then in 1970 I cut off my thinking, but it's the original Crimes of the Future by Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, Catch-22, and Myra Breckinridge. All that stuff is in theaters, and the more successful titles in that list that we've just been through remained in theaters, like Patton, for example, the eventual Academy Award winner, for months, just like Airport. So you could sample something experimental and a little unusual, maybe outre and offensive, go see Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, and then calm down. All that's to say that Airport piles together as something that is extremely reassuring to any viewer, except for a couple of odd angles. But the main reassurance is these extremely competent fellas and the handful of extremely competent women who work around them will safely deliver a plane that's put in jeopardy because of a terrorist act.
For me, the most heartwarming sort of message is that human lives are more important than business. When Burt Lancaster tells the boys on the board to
stick it
to get stuffed, it's because, well, I'm not worried about your business.
Yeah,
I have lives to save.
And then there are these frayed edges that are nonetheless part of how the movie also resolves, and that is the sexual mores of people. Right? Dean is running around on his wife. And the wife is the sister of the guy who controls the airport. And Dean basically is not just symbolically and figuratively, but he's leaving his wife for his girlfriend, who's knocked up and is saved from the terrorist attack because of his cool thinking. He goes off to the airport or to the hospital with her, ditching his wife. And that's Barbara Hale, I remember from Perry Mason. Poor Barbara Hale's getting the shaft from Dean Martin. She doesn't deserve it. She loves this man. And we watch, it's a great bit of vocalized acting where we see her observe her man go off with his girlfriend after she's already acknowledged to her brother, yeah, he's got girlfriends, but he always comes home to me. That's over, sister. There's something really painful, dreadful about it. We also watch as our boy Bert gets to run away with Gene Seberg because the plane lands. They go inspect the hole in the side where the explosion was. Woo! That was terrible.
Yeah.
They hop in the station wagon. They're going to go to the diner and have breakfast
Right.
because his wife's already left him, and so now he's free to go plow new pastures, so to speak. And he runs off with a big grin on his face. Now that seems kind of weird for the moment. Although the 1970s, a lot of mainstream movies would explore polyamory, broken marriages, people who don't want to be married, and a lot of sex.
Well, because that's when divorce was really kind
ramping
of
up.
Yeah, because it wasn't such a taboo anymore.
And this is an example of that, because right on screen they're negotiating the way they're going to decommit, and partly that's based on her adultery, his professional disinterest, and the quiet fact he actually loves his assistant. And it's a May December on both sides. Dean and Bert both get these spring chickens, so to speak. We get a painful moment of the widow of our terrorist, saying sorry and apologizing to all of the other people stepping off the plane. And Maureen Stapleton kind of brings it. I feel really terrible for her.
Yeah, I was. Well, it's funny because she was nominated alongside Helen Hayes for best supporting actress, which is weird for me because she was very good, but she's also not really in it very much.
Yeah. She spends part of the movie being kind of vegetative, so overwhelmed by this terrible news of her husband, she can't really speak, and they just kind of move around like a dish rag, room to room.
Right.
But then she has a couple of really key things that she does. In the first time we meet her, she's working as a waitress, and she doesn't know her husband's plans, but she's basically telling him, yeah, our lives have fallen apart, but I picked you. Just find a way. Don't give up on you.
Right.
Because I haven't given up on us. You're like, now that's a woman, man. She has committed.
This is what we do at airport. Situations arise, and we just put our noses to the grindstone, and we take care of business.
This is Blockbusters and Birdwalks, a conversation between Garrett Chaffin-Quiray and
Ed Rosa.
Boop boopity doo.